Hey folks, it's Aurora. Today we are dusting up a part of a Guild Wars 2 that doesn't always get the spotlight, which are the dungeons. Back in the day, dungeons were the only instance content that we can do in Guild Wars 2. We didn't have anything like fractals, strikes or raids in game, so this is the only place that was considered an endgame content. Dungeons have kinda slipped into shadows after those other stuff came, but don't let that fool you, they are still a blast, packed with lore unique to them, and there are some unique weapon and armor skins for each separate dungeon, and a dose of chaotic fun, especially if you haven't done them for a while, or ever for that matter. And lucky for us, Dungeon Rush Week event is on right now. That means bonus rewards for running paths across all 8 dungeons. It's a perfect excuse to revisit those old school challenges or, well, discover them for the first time if you're just joining the game. Whether you're in it for gold or some skins that are unique to these dungeons or just a different change of pace from fractals or strikes, dungeons offer a refreshing kind of content, and there are some of them that are soloable if you want to try them. I'll mention it a little bit, but yeah, it is a possibility. So without further ado, let's dive into the depths of Tyria and see what these dungeons still have to offer, especially during this Dungeon Rush week. In this video, I'll be talking about dungeons in general, but since I'm making this video in Dungeon Rush week, I first wanna mention what you can do during the Dungeon Rush event. So this is the achievement for the Dungeon Rush event. It's under bonus event, Dungeon Rush. This is the achievement that you need to complete for the Dungeon Rush event, and you're gonna get 500 dungeon tokens as well as some more extra from the dungeon completions, any of the dungeons. You have to complete total of 10 dungeon paths or dragon response missions, since the game counts that as dungeons as well. We don't have any rewards for the special part of the Wizard's World for the Dungeon Rush event. We used to get it for the other Rush events, but for Dungeon Rush, we don't have anything. To complete the Dungeon Rush champion, we just have to complete any of the dungeon paths or any of the dragon response missions. We have to only complete 10 of them, and there are no dailies or anything like that in Dungeon Rush event. I advise you to complete different dungeons for the dungeon frequenter, since you need to complete 8 different dungeons for the dungeon frequenter, and you're gonna get 150 more tokens and 5 gold, which is not that much, but still, gold is gold. It's nice to have it. And this is pretty much it for the Dungeon Rush event. Like I said, you can complete this event in a single day. We have a week. You don't have to rush it, even though it's a rush event. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Dungeon Rush event. First things first. This is the Dungeon Transportation NPC. You used to go to the entrance of each 8 dungeon and enter from there, but for convenience, Guild Wars 2 added this NPC, which you can use to access all 8 dungeons from line search. It's pretty convenient and pretty simple to use. Let's say I wanna go to Citadel Flame. You need to go here before the dungeon's teleporter and enter the Citadel Flame gate, which can be contested, and you have to do some events around there. But now all you have to do is talk with this NPC, select Stellar Flame, select the thing that you want to do, if you want to do explorable or just replay the story mode, and click it, and you are there. Pretty simple. And then you can start your exploration in this dungeon. Let's talk about the rewards that you can get from dungeons now. So, the thing that you can get from dungeons are these achievements, these collection achievements. For example, I didn't complete the Aurora skins yet. I'll probably try to get as many of these as possible. But nowadays, you don't have to do dungeons to obtain those skins. You can actually use, for example, this Tyrian Dungeon Explorer track and get an armor from this reward track. And all you have to do is do World versus World, or there is one reward track here in PvP as well. As you can see, I never do PvP. And yeah, you can complete those from World versus World or PvP. Because I mentioned it briefly, no one is actually doing dungeons now, so you might have difficult time to find groups in dungeons unless there is anyone like Dungeon Rush Week. Probably there are some people. Yeah, there are some people doing the Dungeon Rush event, and even then, now as you can see, there aren't many people doing those. And like I said, one of the reasons that people are doing these dungeons are these unique skins to each dungeons. That's the Aurora, this is the Caduceus Manor, and Starrow's Embrace. Each of them has their own unique skin, and once you complete those collections, you're gonna get these ascended accessories to finish this Dungeoneer achievement, which will reward you this Dungeoneer's Grandmaster chest, which in return grant you one of these exotic weapons that you can choose. I advise you to check wiki which one of these are expensive at the moment, because some of them are pretty rare drops, like these Karka skins, and I think this one's also a little bit rare. I dropped it purely by luck. And these are the collection achievements and collection armor and weapons that you can get by completing these dungeons, and all 8 dungeons have their unique style for armors and weapons. Another thing that you can get from dungeons is the achievement points and some gold. So every path has 3 explorable modes and 1 story mode. You can access them from line search, as I mentioned before, but you need to complete the story mode to actually access the explorable modes. It's pretty simple. Most of the story modes are easily soloable, but you need to finish all of these paths, including the story mode, to get the achievement for that dungeon path. Only Aurora has 4 explorable modes, and the story mode is actually your personal story that you need to finish. So this one is a little bit of nuisance. It takes some time, and yeah, it's a lot difficult than the other 7. The Dragon Response missions are not included in this one. I think Guild Wars to count them as dungeons as well, since we have an achievement in bonus events for the Dungeon Rush Week as finishing a Dragon Response mission. And like I said, the dungeons are very old content, and they haven't updated them for a while now. The only change that they did for dungeons is the Twilight Arbor. They swapped one of the paths with Aether Blade path, and they gave the Aether Blade path their own achievement. These are unique to that path only and a little bit more challenging than the other dungeon paths. And if you finish dungeons repeatedly, there is this achievement that you can get 200 achievement points. You need to do dungeons continuously, like I think you need to do 40 of them or something like that. And they have this dungeon frequenter achievement. This doesn't grant achievement points, but it rewards you some dungeon tokens as well as 5 golds if you finish 8 dungeons. And all these 8 dungeons has to be unique, so you can't repeat, for example, Ferras Path, or you can't repeat the ones that you did before. You need to finish 8 unique ones to get the gold and the chest of dungeoneering that contains the dungeon tokens. And yeah, it's pretty much it for the achievements and some gold and token parts of the rewards. I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you can actually solo some of these dungeons, but you need to have unique builds if you want to solo these dungeons. And since we are having a dungeon rush week, you can actually find groups in looking for group under dungeons. You need to check if anyone is doing them. It's not that common, but yeah, people sometimes post their groups there when they are doing dungeons. Some of these paths are soloable, and like I said, you need some unique builds for those dungeon paths that you can solo. I know I can't solo dungeons with this Mesmer build, but I can show you a thief build that I did that could actually solo some of these dungeons. You're gonna need some sort of sustain if you wanna solo a dungeon, or you need to have a great grasp of your class if you're gonna go glass cannon and just burst down everything in sight. I'm gonna give an example for the sustain build that I did for this thief. I used, it's still berserker gears, but I have this relic of Zakiros, which will grant me a % chance of converting my crits into healing. And on top of that, I have Sigil of Blood, which will again give me some health upon landing a critical hit. This build has 100% critical hit with Fury. And I also have this one, again with critical hit. I'm gonna get some of the damage that I did back as healing. So, in short, you're gonna need some sort of healing if you wanna do dungeon solo. There are some paths that you can't solo. For example, instead of Flame, there is a path where you need 4 people to stay in pyres to open a gate for the 5th person to kill an elite. I know that you can do it with 4 people if you can send your, for example, mech to kill the elite. But other paths have stuff like that too. For example, Aetherblade path that they added last as a mini event that you need 2 person to bring oozes to oil a gear. So you need at least 2 person for the Aetherblade path. With that said, you can adapt your build to have more healing or vitality or toughness to survive in dungeons better, but if you are gonna go with full Berserker, for example, you might wanna put in some stuff like this trait or the Relic of Zakiros, which will grant you % healing to survive dungeons if you're doing them solo. I might put up a video later on if I ever solo a dungeon, but you can find some videos on YouTube that some people actually soloed dungeons way before we had some power creep in the game. If you are getting into dungeons or it's been a while, some paths are more beginner friendly than the others. As a starter, I advise you to do either stories or maybe Caduceus Manor, because generally those are easier, but the story modes are longer than the explorables. If you want to take your time, you can actually do the story modes easily, but if you want to do some quick runs, I advise you to start with Caduceus Manor or Ascalonian Catacombs. If I remember correctly, Path 1 was the easiest. There are some easy Citadel of Flame paths, but you need some people to do the mechanics in Citadel of Flame. So if you're trying to do solo or trying to do it with pugs that don't know what dungeons are, I don't advise Citadel of Flame that much. Twilight Harbor's first path was, yeah, it's easier than the others. Sorrow's Embrace in general, I find it difficult, and I actually like these two. They again have some mechanics in them, but I find them fun to actually do them. Crucible has some skips that you need to know if you want to finish it quickly, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And Arach, I don't recommend you to start with this one. It's long and it takes time and it's difficult if you are just starting the dungeons. But if you get into the dungeons and get acquainted with the mechanics, it's actually fun to do Arach. And here is one more tip. This isn't technically dungeons related. Well, it is dungeon related, but not actual finishing dungeons related. So let's say you're opening maps and you wanna go to Curse Shore. You don't have any waypoints around Curse Shore, but Arach is near there. So you can actually get into the dungeon transporter, select Arach, select Explorable Boat, and after you load into Arach, if you log out, you will end up in Line Search. But if you use the entrance here, you will be transported to Curse Shore. Let's see here. And we are in Curse Shore. So you don't have to go all the way to the Curse Shore to open this map. It's the last map of Ore. And you actually have to start with either Mount Maelstrom or Sparkfly Fen and finish these two maps to get to Curse Shore if you are walking. But if you are using Dungeon Teleporter, you are in the Curse Shore, last map of Ore. It goes same with these other dungeons. If you want to go to Mount Maelstrom, you can use Crucible of Eternity. Some of these dungeons are in the starter zones like Caduceus Manor or Ascalonian Catacombs. You don't have to use them, it should be already open, but if you want to go to Frostgorge Sound, for example, if you want to kill Jormak and you don't have the Frostgorge Sound map, you just have to go to Honor of the Waves, exit the dungeon, and you're gonna have this waypoint and you can go participate in Glow of Jormak. And you can find these dungeons on your map with these symbols. It's pretty simple. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped you get most of the Dungeon Rush week and maybe inspired you to give dungeons another shot. I wouldn't. If you found this helpful, consider liking the video and subscribing for more Guild Wars 2 content. Stay safe in those dungeons and may your groups be less chaotic than mine. See ya!